Trish is with us now. Dana?
Yeah, Tricia McLaughlin, thank you so much for being here. You've had about, I think, 22 minutes since we last heard from you when you were on Fox and Friends. Is there any other information you have gathered that you could share with us now?
Dana, we want to give you guys as much information and the American public as much information as we possibly can, but details are very much still emerging. Right now we're praying for our law enforcement, for the detainees, and for the local law enforcement who is also on scene. We know that there were 3 fatalities, potentially detainees, not ICE law enforcement at this time, that there have been other injuries, and some individuals are in critical condition, and we'll get you that information as soon as possible. As far as the shooter goes, there was a self-inflicting gunshot wound, and he is dead. He's deceased. We believe that he was shooting at law enforcement and the detainees from an apartment building. Again, those details are still murky. It looked like it might have been a sniper or some sort of a long-form shot, but as soon as we have more information, we will give that out. But we do ask the American public, please join us in praying for the victims, for our law enforcement. You know, we've been saying for months that the rhetoric around our law enforcement, particularly ICE, the dehumanization, the demonization, has spun so far out of control, and that someone is going to get hurt or someone's going to get killed. And we hope that's not today, but this must stop. And I do have to know, almost a month to the date at this Dallas ICE field office, we actually had a bomb threat there, a viable bomb threat. So we know that there has been really out of control rhetoric and threats against them. And please join us in praying.
Trish, we take your message to heart. Thank you for that. Let's try and work through piece by piece here. Can you confirm that this gunman fired from the rooftop first? Let's start there.
I'm sorry, I think we're having a little bit of an audio issue. If you wouldn't mind repeating that.
Yeah, no problem. Can you confirm that the gunshots came from a rooftop nearby? And if so, at what distance?
That's what we're looking at right now, Bill. I cannot confirm what distance, but as soon as we have that information available, we will bring it to you.
So let me try another one here. Our sources out of Dallas and the police department down there are saying no law enforcement officials injured. I think that's what you said a moment ago. 3 shot, 2 dead. The victims were being led into the building to be processed, to be repatriated. I would assume that is people that ICE has picked up, either on the streets of Dallas or somewhere in the state of Texas.
We know our ICE law enforcement was not injured, but we're not sure about local security and other local law enforcement. That looks like there may have potentially been injuries there, but I can confirm that it looks like the detainees were among the victims.
Awkward question. How do you determine who was the target of these bullets? Was it the ICE agents or the detainees?
Either way, it's monstrous, but I think that this is something that Homeland Security Investigations is going to be looking at, as well as our partner law enforcement. We're going to get to the answers for the American people as soon as we can.
Tricia, one question about people who would be being led into this facility at this time of the morning. Are these people, in your experience, and I know that you maybe not know specifically, but would these people be people that were just picked up overnight, or were they in process to be repatriated, deported, because they'd already been through their due process?
So this was not a detention facility. This is a field office, so this would be a short-term processing. So they would likely not have been on their way to being deported. It would be more likely, I can't speak to the exact specifics because it could be a case-by-case basis, but in this case, it's very likely that they had recently been arrested by ICE.
I see.
Okay, so Brooke Taylor confirms, our correspondent out of Dallas. Says the following, I'll just read it. ICE Dallas also now on the record, no agents or officers hurt. The shooter shot detainees on way, our crew rather, is en route to the scene there. Trish, when you talk about a field office, what happens there?
There's processing that happens there. Of course, this is where our brave men and women of ICE work. But again, I do remind viewers that it was just a month ago to the date that there was a viable bomb threat here. So this location, it looks like it's been targeted, and we don't know how long this individual has been planning this act. It looks like he could have been watching to look at the processing and see what happens on a day-to-day basis at this Dallas field office. But this is all answers that Homeland Security investigation is going to get down to the bottom of.
Could we zoom out, Tricia, and tell me a little bit what you know about the possible bomb threats or threats across the country, where you're seeing them the most? We mentioned a few places, Massachusetts, Los Angeles, Chicago. But are there others, and maybe the scope and the scale of the threats that you are dealing with on a daily basis and trying to figure out, is this a real threat, is it not? I know you take all threats seriously, but I'm sure that all of these threats have ramped up in the last 9 months, and I'm curious what the scope and scale is so that our audience can understand how seriously you take it and how widespread the problem is.
Absolutely. Our law enforcement are facing a 1,000% increase in assaults against them. That's just day to day doing their job. DHS is a law enforcement agency, and they're simply enforcing the law that's on the books. What we're seeing is it's not just our officers as well. It's their family members are being doxxed, their children where they go to school, their spouses where they work. It's going on places like rhetoric, the dark web. It's a very ugly thing, and as far as where we're exactly seeing these threats, we just saw out of Chicago over the weekend, we saw riots around one of our field offices, one of the processing centers for ICE. We saw our law enforcement were being pummeled with cans, they were being assaulted, their car tires were being slashed, and of course we see this out of Portland increasingly, and then out of Los Angeles recently with the surge in federal resources there. I mean, I think a lot of viewers will remember there was actually a protest or a riot where they started shooting at our law enforcement. It's absolutely unacceptable, and I do think it's incumbent it's really upon the media, upon politicians. We got to turn the rhetoric down. We don't want anyone to be hurt. We don't want anyone to get killed. This is an awful day.
Wise words. Trish, give us a better sense about how ICE is operating in a state like, let's just take Texas. Like, how many field offices would there be in Dallas? And if you're a detainee, let's say, and you're brought to this area and you're processed, where do you go from that field office? And how long does it take to be on a plane and be sent back to a country that perhaps you came from?
Well, it's very much a case-by-case basis. We're trying to, make this process as seamless and less onerous, not just for the migrant themselves, but also for federal resources. So we try to get these detainees from the facility to a detention center that's close geographically, as well, likely places that have the ability to transport people from that detention facility back to their home country or back to the country that they will ultimately live after they've gone through due process in the proper immigration system.
Okay, I don't want to be so particular about this, but I really think, like the American public, we're just trying to understand, like, how ICE operates. And this is a really good case here that you could help explain, the system and how it works. So I assume if you're a migrant, you're here illegally, and you're wanted for a crime maybe in this country or another country, that you would be taken to this field office. And from the field office, what, do you have your case heard? Are you taken to this prairie land facility that we mentioned a short time ago? Like, how does this all come together? How's it working?
Yeah, again, it is a case-by-case basis. So some of them will be there for averages about 72 hours, but it could certainly be longer. Ultimately, they would be in that detention facility, and that's the last place that they would be before, like you mentioned, Prairie Land. That's the last stop before that they would head home to their home country via a deportation flight. So we absolutely want to give, the men and women who are watching really the details on how ICE works, because there has been such and dehumanization. And people forget this is a law enforcement agency. This is what the men and women of Congress determine the laws and pass the laws. We're just enforcing them. We're just carrying them out. It's sad, Bill. That's why our men and women of ICE have to wear masks, because they're targeting members of the cartels, members of vicious gangs, and other criminal rings. And they're being targeted, and their families are being doxxed, and that's how they need to not show their identities while they carry out these operations.
That actually leads me to something I was asking Bill about, but I'll throw it to you because we were just trying to figure all of this out. For somebody like one of these detainees that's going into a facility, would it be known that they're going to be there at that time?
Well, they certainly have access to phones and to legal counsel. They can call family members. So, I mean, and potentially even friends. So I think that there's, most of the time, these individuals, their family and friends and likely associates know where they are at the time.
How would you characterize the level of cooperation that you've had from the authorities in Texas when compared to some other states that may have right now resist?
They're fantastic. The local and state government in Dallas have just been phenomenal. The law enforcement to work with, they've been very quick to respond. I mean, my phone and my lap is buzzing as we're speaking, going back and forth with our ICE law enforcement who are on the ground, and we're trying to get more details and, really make sure that all of our field offices across the country, all of ICE's detention centers across the country are safe and secure, not just for our law enforcement, not just for our security and the staff, but for these migrants themselves.
Tricia, you have been incredibly generous with your time. I was going to ask you maybe one more question and then we're going to let you go and gather more information, because you are as transparent a person I have ever seen, being able to provide what you know and to be very clear about what you do not know, and that right now we are still gathering that information. I know that the recruitment for ICE has been through the roof, and I know that there are many more resources that Department of Homeland Security has in order to fund that recruitment. Has there been a sense of any concern about those who are coming on board that they might personally be concerned about their own safety if they decide to join ICE?
Well, of course, I think we have been pretty clear that it is a dangerous job. These men and women really are patriots when they get up every single day to take on the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens. But Americans are answering the call, and they know what the president's mandate is and what the American people's mandate is to get really vicious criminal illegal aliens out of our country. Dana, just in the last 250 days, we've arrested more than 600 known or suspected terrorists. Around 3,000 members of Tren de Aragua out of the interior of our country. And I think that these men and women who've applied, which there's more than 151,000 of them, which is just remarkable considering we were set out to recruit 10,000 and we've gotten 151,000 applications. They recognize that call, and they want to defend our homeland, and they want to make their communities safer.
Trish, thank you for your time. We may call on you again. We're going to be here for a couple hours, okay? Appreciate you coming on.